Welcome to the latest in the Cabinet Learning Series. Today's session, Streamlining Your Accounts Payable Process. We're going to introduce you and train you on our Advanced Processing module today. Jeffrey Stamatellis, one of our sales engineers, will be your presenter. The session is going to run about 30 minutes. What we're going to show you today, we're going to demonstrate Cabinet AP as it applies in an accounts payable process. We automate the processes to help you gain control of accounts payable problems that you may face. Remember that this module can automate any data-driven process that you might have that requires data verification, multiple approvers, and data export to another system like an accounting system. So we're going to automate your data entry by capturing key data from scanned images, and by automating, we're going to help increase your accuracy. And by increasing the accuracy, we're going to improve your process control, which reduces costs associated with data entry, processing, filing, and retrieving these documents once they're filed. So here's an overview of what happens with the AP module. First off is capture over on the left. How we get data into the system. First off, you can use cabinet batch, which if you have the cabinet safe system, you already have batch. So this is a capture tool that's built into cabinet safe. It's an easy way to scan and place documents into a workflow process, and it does require some manual data entry, but you can get started today by using batch. Or secondly, you could use advanced capture. It's a component of Cabinet's AP solution that we're going to demonstrate today, which uses table extraction to capture the primary data and line item data and place it into a file for import into the Cabinet Safe system. This automates data entry, helps decrease any data entry errors. It's important to focus on your highest volume of incoming documents for automation. That is, you want to automate the most for efficiency. Or thirdly, you can use a third-party data capture tool, which would extract data and place it into a database that we could then import into Cabinet Safe. In the middle, then we import data, which is the middle block there. We import it into the AP engine, where folders are created in Cabinet Safe if they're needed, indexes are populated, and items are placed into their proper workflow rules that we've already created, and the documents are stored in Cabinet Safe. Once we approve the data, we export to a database, which is then available for import by an accounting system like QuickBooks or MAS, one of the accounting systems. So that's just a quick overview of what goes on. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jeffrey and let him demonstrate the solution.
All right, thank you, Gene. So the first thing that I want to go over is what Gene mentioned, which is the manual AP module, so running it through manually. And to do that, we're going to use batch. So I'm going to come down here to my batch button here in the lower left. This is going to put me into batch mode. So from here, I'm going to scan directly to batch. So I'm going to click on my scan button. It's then going to ask me to pick the scanner that I want to use. I'll choose that, and now it's going to bring up my scanner settings. All right, so at this point, all I need to do is hit scan. And now it's scanning in my document. Alright, so now I have a thumbnail on my left. If I click on that thumbnail, it's going to give me a preview of the image to the right here. I can make any annotations directly on the image that I need to. But as soon as it's ready to file, all I need to do is choose the cabinet, which is again AP Vendors, do the drop down from my folder list, and I've got American Wireless, which is the folder I want to file it into. I want it to go into the Documents tab, and then I'm going to pick my document naming template. So here I have one that's AP Invoices, so I'm going to choose that. And all I have to do now is just hit File Document. And what that's doing is it's filing the document into the folder that I told it to. And attached to the document naming template is a workflow. So the document, as soon as it's filed, is going to be sent through a workflow process. Now I'm going to go ahead and go back to Safe. And if I go into my American Wireless folder, I can see I have my invoice. So I can click on it and I can see a preview. So we know that it's filed. And at this point, I can go ahead and go into AP and process this document through the approval process. All right, so here I have AP open. It's taking me directly to the login screen. So all I need to do at this point is enter my username and login or password and hit the login button. All right, and as soon as I'm logged in, I'll see my invoice directly here to the left. And as soon as I click on that, it's going to then bring up my preview of the image here to the right down here so I can see my information. And then now I have the ability on the left here to go ahead and manually enter this information. So I'm going to go ahead and enter this primary information here to the left, and that's going to be anything from the vendor name to the invoice number, invoice date and total, things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and enter this information here. Do this calendar to pick the date. August 2006. It's an old invoice. Select the date, and then I'm going to scroll down my image so I can see the total. There we go. All right, so as soon as I'm finished entering this information in, you'll notice that as I make a change in the field, each field turns green. That means that what I've entered has not been saved, but I have made a change to the field. So to save that information, I'm just going to come down here to the Save button, click on that, and it's immediately saved all of my information. Now another thing you might notice is the document title itself has changed from Invoice for American Wireless, and it's been updated with the information that I filled out here for primary data. Now once that's all filled out, I'm going to scroll up on my image so I can see the line items. And at this point, I'm ready to enter the line item information, and that's right above the image here. So all I need to do is click on Add Line Item. It's going to bring up my line item field here, and I can simply type in the information from the invoice. And I can tab through each field, so I'm going to tab and enter the information for these line items. I can also enter information that might not be on the invoice, such as code, or put it into a certain class for your accounting system. I can put personal notes on each individual line item if I need to. I want to maybe have the next approver in the process review a certain line item. I can put a note here that I can have the next approver in the process take a look at this. And then all I need to do is go to my next line item and enter that information. So I'm going to do that now. And as soon as I'm done, you'll notice that these fields also change color when you make an edit to them. So I'm going to make sure to save my changes, and saving changes for line items is right beside your Add Line Item button. So I'm going to click Save here, and that's ready to go. So as soon as I've entered all my line item and primary data information and everything's good to go, I can then move on to approve the document and send it through the rest of the workflow process. So down here towards the bottom, I can see that I have the process mode selected right now. I can put a note in here if I want to. It's telling them that everything looks good. And all I have to do now is click Send. I have a built-in rule telling the document where to go based on the invoice total. And if it's over $5,000, I have it going to my accounting group. If it's less than $5,000, I have it being filed directly back in Safe and taken out of the workflow approval process. So I'm going to go ahead down here and click on Send. And there it goes. Now since that was less than $5,000, it's going to be filed right back here in the cabinet. And all I have to do now is I can just refresh this, and I can see now that I have the title updated in Safe. And I can right click on the document and come down to where it says Get AP Information. And at this point, I can now see all the AP information at any time that I entered for this document. So again, my primary data, I see the invoice name, number, date, total, everything like that. I can toggle over to see my line items. I can see everything I've entered for that, as well as any notes I might have put up on a line item. And I can do a trace, so I can see where the document's been, where it's going, where it currently is, and see any notes that might have been put on the document. So I can see that this document was sent to me, and that at this time and date I approved it, and it went back to the cabinet. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of that.
Okay, so now that we've gone over running a document manually through the AP module, I'd like to go over using a more automated process. And to do that, we're going to use Advanced Capture. Advanced Capture is a capture software that we sell, and this is what we use to bring in the documents and process the documents to grab all of that primary and line item information off of the document instead of bringing them in through batch like we did when we manually ran the document. So with that being said, I'm going to jump in here to Advanced Capture. I'm going to come here to my Capture Import button so I can bring in my documents. I'm going to choose my AP job. There we go. Okay, so now that I have my job selected, I'm going to go ahead and highlight the documents that I want to bring in as well. And now I've already pre-scanned these documents onto my computer, so all I did was point to the folder that I scanned the documents to. So I'm going to go ahead and select those and bring them into Advanced Capture. Now as these are being brought in, I'd like to go ahead and mention that when it comes to using a capture software to grab information off of a document, the image quality has a lot to do with what we're able to grab. So if we bring in a very poor quality image, we might not be able to grab some of the line item information or some of the primary invoice information. So that's something to keep in mind when you're scanning in these documents. You want to make sure that the quality of the scan is the best it can be. So now once these documents have been brought in, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next step in Advanced Capture. And what this is going to do is it's going to go ahead and read the documents. And once it reads the documents, it's going to determine which kind of documents it's processing. So it'll find out which vendor is for each document, and it'll also find out whether it's a purchase order, an invoice, or a packing slip. Once it finds out what kind of document it is, it's then going to go here to Index, and it's going to grab all of the primary information. So that's going to be the purchase order number, invoice number, date, total, things like that. And then if it's an invoice, it's going to go ahead and grab the line items off the document as well. And once it's finished grabbing all of the information, it's going to then OCR the documents, which it's doing right now. Once it's finished OCRing, it's going to move on to migration, and it's going to migrate those documents and all of that information to my SQL table. Okay, so now that we've migrated the documents and migrated the data to a SQL table, everything is ready to be imported into the AP module. So now that that's ready, I'm going to go ahead and run my import, which is running here in the background. So now once that's done running, everything should be imported into the AP module. So the first thing I want to show you here is if I come into Safe, I'm in my AP vendors cabinet. Inside my cabinet I have some vendor folders here, and if I go ahead and jump into a vendor folder, the first thing I'm going to see is a purchase order with the associated invoice and packing slips attached to the purchase order. I can select a document to immediately see a preview here to the right. And one new item here in AP is if I right click on a document, such as this invoice here, I'm going to come down to where it says Get AP Information. And from here, it's going to immediately show me all of my AP information for this document. I can see all the primary data, so again, that's going to be the vendor name, the invoice number, invoice date, and everything like that. It's going to show me the line items for the document, so I can see each individual line item. And I can also see a trace of the document, so I can see where the document started out and who it is currently with, what status it's in, and any documents that might, or any notes that might be a part of the document. So I can see here that the document has been sent for approval. Alright, so now what I want to do is I'm going to jump into AP, and we're going to approve some of these documents. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is get logged in here with my Safe login. And as soon as I get logged in, I'm going to see a list of all my items in my workflow queue to approve right here to the left. So I'm going to click on my first item here, which I can see is an invoice from November 17th. I have my invoice number and the total of my invoice right here. So I'm going to click on that. And as soon as I click on this, it's going to open up the document. And to the right, it's going to show me all of the line items for this particular document, as well as a preview of the document directly below. So at this point, I can go ahead and start to verify the data that was brought in from Advanced Capture. I want to go ahead and drag this down a little bit so that I can compare my image of the invoice to the line items right here at the top. I can make any changes that I need to. I can add any codes to any particular line items, as well as assign it to a class. I can make any notes on a line item for the next person in the approval process. So I can ask them to please review this in one line item. And as soon as I'm finished making my changes, I want to remember to make sure to save my changes. So I'm going to come down here to save. Save those changes there, and then come back over to the left here where I can see my primary information. So after I check to make sure this is all set, I'm going to go ahead and approve this document. So just like the invoice that I approved when we were running this manually, it's using the same rules. So this is going to go to my accounting group because the invoice total is over $5,000. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit send here. And there we go. The document's been sent on through the workflow approval. And I can come here to my next item. So on my next item here, I'm going to again just check to make sure my line items are correct. A couple other things that I can do while I'm here in AP. I'm going to click on this icon right here that looks like a clock. And this is going to give me a trace of the document here. So I can again see where the document came from, the current status, who it's currently with, and as well as any notes that are on the document. Right below that, I can see any associated documents with the invoice that I have selected. So if I want to, I can immediately compare the invoice to its associated purchase order, and I can also compare it to any packing slips to see what was shipped. Alright, so I'm going to close out of that right here and continue to work on these documents. So far we've been processing all of these documents. I want to jump over to what we call exception mode. So this would be if there's any reason to send a document back. Maybe it was misfiled or sent to the wrong person. You can send it as an exception, and this will allow you to do a couple things. I can return this to the person that sent it to me. I can send it to the person that originated the workflow process. I could reject it to another safe user if I needed to. And I also have the ability to do some deletion. So here I have the option to either delete the AP record and file the document. So what that'll do is it will take all of this AP data and delete it out of the AP table so that this information is not imported into your accounting system, but the document will still be filed for safekeeping if you still want a record of that document. The other option down here is to delete both the AP record and the document. This will, again, delete the AP record so this information is not imported into your accounting system, and it will also delete the document out of safe. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and delete the AP record and file the document and put a note on here to say this was a misfile. Once I put a note, I'm going to go ahead and send this as an exception. And there we go. So now that document has been taken out of workflow and is sitting inside of safe. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my next item here to approve this as well. And I can see here that this one actually was not able to grab the line item information. So this will require me to manually enter the information just like I did when we were running this through manually. So I'm going to go ahead and enter just one line item here. Again, I'm just tabbing to move across the field so I can enter this information. And once I have it entered, I'm going to go ahead and save. And let's approve the document. And finally, we're going to check to make sure our line items are correct on here. Scroll down my image. And I can see that everything looks good. So again, on my last item here, I'm just going to go ahead and hit send to send this on through the approval process. Okay, so now that I've processed all of my documents, I'm going to jump back over here to safe. And again, I have my vendor folders, and I'm just going to jump inside my American Wireless folder here. And again, I have my purchase order. In this case, I have two with the invoices attached as well as the packing slips. I can see that the document that was over $5,000 and went to accounting is not quite fully approved because it's still in the workflow process. If I want to see who it's currently with, I can come back to where I right click on the document and select Get AP Information. So here where we can see the primary information, I can come back, I can also see the line items again, and you can see that it's been updated with the code class as well as the note that I put on the line items here. And then to see who it's with, I'm going to come here to trace, and I can see that it's currently with the accounting group. The status is new, which means no one's worked on it yet, but I do know where the document is. So I'm going to close out of this window now. And at this point, any documents that have been fully approved and are completely out of the approval process, such as this invoice here, I can see that the workflow icon has disappeared, so it's been fully approved. These documents are ready to have the data exported and imported into the accounting system. So I'm going to go ahead and run my export, excuse me. All right, and once the export is done running, all that data is ready to be imported into the accounting system. So I'm going to run my importer tool, and as soon as that's finished, I can bring up QuickBooks here, and you can see that it's automatically created 2 transactions in QuickBooks for the 2 invoices that got fully approved through my workflow process. I can open up this invoice here, and I can see that all the information that was entered, such as the vendor, the invoice number, the amount, date, and all of the individual line items, have been automatically created and entered as a transaction within QuickBooks. All right, and with that, I'm going to send it back to you, Gene.
If you'd like more information on Cabinet AP or would like to discuss your particular application, contact your reseller or your Cabinet account manager. There's my information on the screen. You can contact me if you'd like to. I want to thank you for your time today. Remember, keep an eye out for our email newsletter, and that's where we announce additional Cabinet Learning Series topics. Thanks, and have a good day.